What's going on, everybody? It is Wednesday, which means it is our day for our weekly Q&A. And I'm really excited about these questions this week. One of the cool things about the questions this week is quite a few of the people who asked them are some of my longest viewers and commenters to my channel. Some people have been around with me for quite a while since I started my channel, and it was really cool to see some questions from some of those people who have been with me during this journey. So if you've not yet seen one of my question and answer episodes, if you have a question that you're curious on my opinion on, these are not fact-based questions, they're just opinion questions, then down below in the comments, please just simply ask your question. Each week I pick 5 questions and I answer them in my midweek Q&A. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first question this week.
Do you think cards related to significant seasons should or will have higher prices, such as the 1962 Topps Roger Maris card?
I think this is a cool question, and I think it's a question that I think it has a kind of an easy answer, and I think the answer is yes. I think that cards from players that did something significant that season are more expensive, and they're more expensive because there are, more people interested in that card. So because everything is based on supply and demand, the price of everything is supply and demand, and sports cards are the perfect example of that. But because everything is supply and demand, if there's any uptick in demand for a particular card for any reason, then that card is going to go up in value. There are people who want to have a card of Roger Maris. And now here's the interesting question, though. The Roger Maris card, now it was 1961 that he broke Babe Ruth's single season home run record, but it wasn't until 62 that the card had that statistic on the back of the card. So the question is, which is the card that more people would be drawn to? Now, from my experience and my discussions with people, it seems to be the card from the year that the event happened, even if that means that the stat is not on the back of the card for that particular incident. So, for example, the 1941 play ball Joe DiMaggio is an especially cool card because it was 1941 that he had his hit streak. The 1961 card for Roger Maris is especially cool because he had his home run record that particular year. Now, there aren't a ton of instances like this. If you kind of think about some of these, iconic seasons and historic seasons, there were some Triple Crowns that took place, and there were, the perfect game from Don Larson, maybe. That 56 Topps card might be a little bit more in demand than the couple on each of the years around it. But there aren't a lot of instances of this happening. And so, but yes, I do believe that they will have more value for cards with iconic seasons, with iconic incidents that happened during that season because of the increase in demand. And quite frankly, I get it, because I'd like to have a 41 DiMaggio, and I'd especially like to have one because of the hit streak. I'd like to have a 61 Roger Maris, and I'd especially like to have one because of the home run record. So I certainly get it why people would be drawn to those cards. And yes, I think there's more demand. And as a result, yes, I think there is more value and will continue to have additional value because of it.
What do you think of the current Pete Rose rookie market? Do you feel these cards are overvalued? do you anticipate a rise or fall if and when he's reinstated by MLB, either while he's alive or posthumously?
All right. So Pete Rose, this is such a tough one. He's kind of a polarizing figure for some. Now, for me, I really like Pete Rose. I have Pete Rose cards. I, have picked some up at card shows that have been shown and featured in some of my card show videos. Pete Rose is a guy that I admire how he played, and I admire what he could accomplish because of not just his hard work, but also his raw skill. Now, sure, he has, some things in his past that have obviously prevented him from being in the Hall of Fame. As far as his cards are concerned, now it's interesting. I just posted a video on Sunday of this week about cards being undervalued, in my opinion, from really 1957 until 1962. There's this stretch of years where I feel like some of these all-time great Hall of Famers, the cards have a dip in value for whatever reason. And if you haven't seen that video yet, I hope that you'll check it out. But then it jumps back up in 63. 63 is a really tough set. And a lot of the cards from that set are very expensive. And a lot of that has to do with the colors on the cards, the chipping of the borders, how tough they were. If you look at the pop reports, they're down from years around it. And it also happens to be Pete Rose's rookie year. Now, it's not the best looking card ever. But, his following year, the 64 card, is an awesome looking card. And then he has a series of cards, 65, 66, 68, that I think are really cool cards. So do I think his card is over or undervalued, or what do I think the valuation? To be honest with you, it seems kind of high to me. I think it's a little bit high. I think part of why it's high is because he's sort of this notorious figure. I think part of the reason it's high is because it's in the 63 set. I think part of the reason it's high is because there's this speculation of, will he get in the Hall of Fame or won't he? And so because of that, it's just got this kind of thing about the card. So personally, I think he was an awesome player. I'm a fan of Pete Rose. I like Pete Rose. I wish Pete Rose was in the Hall of Fame. But I think Pete Rose's cards, especially his rookie card, are probably a little higher than I would think that they would be. Now, what will happen to his cards when or if he makes the Hall of Fame? Quite frankly, I don't think there will be a big change. The main reason why cards go up in value when a player makes the Hall of Fame is it puts them at this different level, this different pedestal than they were before. But I don't think Pete Rose will suddenly be on this different pedestal than he was before. I think people think of him as one of the best hitters of all time, and they will continue to think of him as one of the best hitters of all time. The one thing that's a little bit different potentially is there are a lot of Hall of Fame collectors, and there are a lot of Hall of Fame rookie card collectors who may not have his card right now, but to fill that run, they would need to get his card should he make the Hall of Fame. So I do think there's a chance it could see a little bump up because of how many people have gone to collecting Hall of Famers and collecting Hall of Fame rookie cards. So should he make the Hall of Fame, there would be a little bit of an increase in interest in his cards by those collectors that are chasing those run of rookie cards. Generally speaking, though, when there's a player that we all kind of expect to make the Hall of Fame, and then they do make the Hall of Fame, there's not this huge bounce in their card value because I think a lot of people already had that priced into the market because they were already expecting it. We all know Ichiro is going to make the Hall of Fame. So when Ichiro does make the Hall of Fame, I personally don't see his card taking a huge jump in value because I think it's kind of priced into it already. I think a lot of people who think he's going to be a Hall of Famer that are collecting Hall of Famers have already picked that card up, expecting it to happen. It's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Similar to Derek Jeter. So there are certain guys we all kind of agree are going to make the Hall of Fame. And when they do make the Hall of Fame, their cards don't bounce as much as the guys that kind of go, oh, whoa, that guy made the Hall of Fame. I wasn't expecting that. Sort of like, maybe when Fred McGriff made the Hall of Fame this past year. When that was announced, his cards took a big jump because a lot of people weren't expecting that because he had been on the ballot for so many years and then didn't get in, and then suddenly he's in. So when these guys from like the veterans committees make it into the Hall of Fame, that kind of catches some people off guard. When there's a guy like a Cal Ripken or a Derek Jeter or a Mariano Rivera or a, Ichiro that make the Hall of Fame, and we all knew they were going to make the Hall of Fame, the bounce isn't as much. So, long story short, I think the price of his cards are a little higher than I would have thought, but I think, again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's kind of this notorious guy. He does have the all-time hit record, but it's also the 63 set, where everything takes a jump in price. And there might be a small bump if and when he makes the Hall of Fame, but I don't think it's going to be a huge jump because I think a lot of baseball collectors are already collecting his cards because they're already well aware of his greatness. But this is an interesting one, and it will be interesting to see what happens if and when he does get into the Hall of Fame.
What are your thoughts on guys like Clemens and Bonds getting into the Hall of Fame? I was confused when Ortiz was put in first ballot, especially since he was noted in that report years ago as a steroid user. Also, he was a DH for most of his career and played in a smaller ballpark. If someone is interested in collecting a Bonds rookie card, in your opinion, what would offer the best return on investment?
All right. So another Hall of Fame question, which I get because it kind of makes sense if you think about it. We just had the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, 3 or 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. And so it's what happens is from the time that we have the announcement in January of who is going to be inducted, and then the veterans players, which are a little bit earlier than that, and the time that the players are actually inducted, we kind of sit and look at, what's coming with those particular guys. And then once the induction ceremony happens in July, then what happens is we tend to start looking towards, well, who else is coming in the future? So one of the things I have been looking at and reading about and I plan on doing a video on soon is the Veterans Committee has changed. It is different than it was in years past. And I think as a result of the changes on how it works, it could change how and who and what and when different veterans players make the Hall of Fame as that transition takes place. So look for that coming up in the not too distant future. But regarding Clemens and Bonds, this has been my philosophy from the beginning. And I understand that there are a lot of people that are like, no, you did any PEDs, you're out. You didn't do PEDs, you're still considered. The guys that took PEDs are cheaters. I do understand that perspective. I respect that perspective. My personal belief is that if a player was a Hall of Famer before PEDs came into play, and then they participated in PEDs, then the player should still be a Hall of Famer because they had a Hall of Fame career prior to any PED stuff. Now, their statistics might be skewed, but they were a Hall of Fame player before that ever entered the picture. So for me, had Barry Bonds retired instead of taken PEDs, he would be in the Hall of Fame right now. Had Roger Clemens retired instead of, the allegations against him, then he would be in the Hall of Fame right now. But because of the allegations, because of, the testimony against them, because of the reports against them that they have been associated with those things, what happened was now they're out. I do find it interesting as well about David Ortiz. There are others as well. Now, I don't feel like it's my responsibility to be the auditor of the Baseball Writers Association and who they've let in and who they've not let in. I do personally believe that there are people in the Hall of Fame right now who participated in PEDs. I kind of feel like if you're going to let in some of those guys, then we should consider letting in others of those guys. Referring to the David Ortiz portion of the question, which some people may be curious about, before the Major League Baseball started testing for PEDs, there was an agreement where they started testing players, but it was anonymous. And it was this 1-year trial to see how widespread it really was. And in that, they found out it was more widespread than originally thought by Major League Baseball or whoever. On that particular list, it was a confidential list that was not to be shared. That list leaked out, and one of the names on that list was David Ortiz. So David Ortiz, according to this list of from when it was anonymous, was testing positive. But then David Ortiz is a first ballot Hall of Famer. And it is interesting that we put people in on a first ballot nowadays that we didn't used to years ago. I mean, Cy Young was not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Tris Speaker was not a first ballot Hall of Famer. They were second ballot Hall of Famers. Yogi Berra was not a first ballot Hall of Famer. There are not as many first ballot Hall of Famers historically as there tend to be now. There are guys who are getting in on first ballots now, and it was rare to be a first ballot Hall of Famer back in the early days of the Hall of Fame. So to me, do I think they'll get in? I would think that at some point eventually Clemens and Bonds would be in the Hall of Fame in some way, shape, or form. Whether it be with some sort of association with it or some sort of asterisk with it or something, I think that they'll probably eventually be in. But I don't know. If you are a Barry Bonds collector, the last part of the question was about which of his cards is the one to target. Now, to me, when you're talking about a junk wax era collector, which Barry Bonds is a junk wax era player, he has so many cards that were printed. I mean, his 87 Topps card, his 86 to Rookies card, even his 86 Topps traded card. There are so many of them out there that I don't see those climbing too high in value ever because of the huge supply in the market. So if you're looking for a card that has upward potential, to me, it would need to be a rarer one. So if I were to tell somebody what card I think has the best potential for Barry Bonds, I would probably say his 86 Topps traded card in the Tiffany. Remember, they had the glossy sets, they had the Tiffany sets, where they were a rarer production, they were a higher price, they were much less distributed, and there was an 86 Topps traded Tiffany version. And to me, if you were to target Barry Bonds, the card that I think long term has the most potential would be the Tiffany version of the 86 Topps traded. I know this is a controversial topic. I'm a Yankee fan, but I think David Ortiz is a pretty good guy. I'm obviously biased because I'm a Clemens fan. I've mentioned that many times on the channel. Barry Bonds is a local Northern California guy playing for the Giants for a lot of his career, but he's also a polarizing guy because he didn't have the best relationship with the media. There's so many factors that play into this, but if somebody asked, which you did, what my take is on this whole topic, that's kind of my take. And I totally understand how there are people who have vastly different opinions about what should and shouldn't be allowed for being in the Hall of Fame.
What do you consider the greatest set in each of the major four sports? Why? Use your own interpretation of greatest.
This is one of the harder questions that I have been asked. Really, really difficult question because there's not one right answer. There's probably like 20 right answers. I'll start with hockey because I'm assuming when you say the four major sports that hockey is the fourth. I think you have to say the 79-80 set with the Gretzky rookie, but I would say not the top set. I would say the O-Pee-Chee set. When you're talking hockey, to me, there are so many roots in Canada that when you're talking about the Canadian release, the O-Pee-Chee release, it's also rarer, and Gretzky was playing for Edmonton. It just seems like to me, when you're talking hockey, you think of the 79-80 O-Pee-Chee set. Not just because of the look, but also because the most important card probably, I know there's some other cool cards like the Gordie Howe rookie and stuff. There's other stuff too, but the most important card, the Grail card for most of collectors of hockey is that at 79-80 O-Pee-Chee set. It gets a lot harder moving from there. Basketball, you could make the argument that it would be the 86 Fleer set because of Jordan. I don't think I would go that way, but I understand why somebody would. You could talk about the trifold cards or the triple cards, with the Magic and Bird, because that's one of the most iconic cards in all of basketball. You could talk about, the larger cards, the tall boys, because you've got, a couple of years in a row of some pretty important rookie cards, from Maravich to, Kareem Alcindor. There's some really important cards in there. But if I had to pick one for basketball, I'm going with the 61-62 Fleer set. It's got, Oscar Robertson rookie card, Wilt Chamberlain rookie card, Elgin Baylor rookie card. It's got early cards of other guys. It's got a couple really cool Bob Cousy cards. It had the portrait shot, and then there was an action card. And then there's no cards in basketball for so long that if you want an early vintage card of some of those guys, there aren't a lot of options. So for me, for basketball, it's that set, the 61-62 set. So that leaves football. It gets harder with football for sure for me. You could make the argument it's the 57 top set because you've got a Johnny Unitas rookie and a Bart Starr rookie. And there's some other big cards in there as well, but those are two of the bigger ones. So you could make that argument. You could make the argument that, you got to go back to the early 50s with some of the Bowmans because, there's some autogram cards and some Sammy Baugh cards, and there's a lot of big cards there. I'm probably going to go with the 58 top set because it's got, in my opinion, one of the most important, if not at least my grail football card in it, in the Jim Brown rookie. And then it has the second year card of Bart Starr and the second year card of Johnny Unitas. So we're talking about the two big quarterbacks when quarterbacks really started to throw the ball more. And then you also have, arguably one of the best players of all time, one of the most legendary players of all time in Jim Brown. So I would probably go with that 58 top set, but that's significantly harder for me to answer than the basketball and the hockey question. Now, baseball gets really hard. There's a lot of sets that jump out at me as like the best one or the most important one or the most iconic one. You could talk about the 54 top set because it has some huge rookie cards. It's got the Ernie Banks, it's got the Al Kaline, it's got the Hank Aaron, obviously, too. You could say the T206 set. T206 has one of the most iconic cards, if not the most iconic card in all of collecting, as well as, players like Cy Young and Ty Cobb and Walter Johnson and Christy Mathewson and some of the top players of all time. And they're in nice, bold colors. You could, this is going to sound crazy to some, but you could make the argument that the 89 Upper Deck set is one of the most important sets of all times because everything changed with sports cards when Upper Deck came into the game. It was like kind of cheap cardboard, cheap card stock. Pictures didn't have a lot of thought into them. Very little gloss on the cards, if any. They were just pumping out cards and having pallets of cards come out. And then the 89 Upper Deck was like this high quality card stock, high quality gloss, high quality pictures, holograms on the card. It really changed the hobby. But I don't think I would go with that set either. I think that the 51 Bowman, you have the Mays rookie and the Mantle rookie. That's a huge set. And not just those two, you've got others. You've got Whitey Ford, you've got Monty Irvin, you've got a lot of big rookie cards in that set. But I don't think I'd go with that one. I think you have to say that it's the 52 top set. It's got the most recognizable, the most iconic card in all of collecting in the Mantle. It's got, a really early Mays, and it's got, an Eddie Matthews rookie and a really cool Jackie Robinson card and a really cool Warren Spahn card and a really cool Yogi Berra card. There's so many great cards in that set, and it is so important because that's really when the size got to the approximate size that it is now. Now, I know the 52 set's a little bit bigger than what the standard size is now, but we went from smaller cards like the T206s and the 48, 49 Bowmans and the, the Leafs and the 50 Bowmans and got a little bit bigger in 51. But then in 52, the big card from Topps really changed the game. So it changed the game as far as the look, and it changed the game as far as the hobby, as it has the most important card in the entire hobby. So I have to go with the 52 top set.
Have you ever had buyer's remorse on purchasing a card? Has there been a time when you missed out on a card and you regretted it?
Man, tough question. Generally speaking, I don't have a lot of regret for a card that I missed out on, because ultimately there are going to be others out there. very, very rarely is there only like one of a card that you want. So I don't generally look back and go, I missed it, because like there will be another one. So I try not to get too down on it. There was a card that I missed out on an eBay auction the other day that I really wanted from the T206 set. I really wanted this card, and it sold for less than it should have sold for. And I was the second highest bidder. And I don't know how high the highest bidder actually bid, but I'm kicking myself that I didn't bid higher. But I keep going back to, there will be another one. And it might be a while, but there will be another one. Another card that I think about that I didn't buy, that I wish that maybe I had considered, is, as you guys know, I have, a former student is in the Tigers rotation. And, I've been kind of trying to collect his first Bowman Rainbow. And I've got all of them now, except for his 1/1 Superfractor and his out of 5 red. And his out of 5 red came up on auction over the summer last year, so about 13 months ago. And I didn't bid on it because it was pretty expensive. And I'm like, I can't bid on this because, I love Matt and he was a good kid, but like, that's a lot of money. Like, that's more money than I should be spending on Matt's cards. And so I didn't bid on it, and I kind of am bummed out because I know there are only 5 of them. So when will one come up again? And will they go down in price? I don't know. So occasionally I'll kind of kick myself a little bit, but ultimately pretty much everything out there will show up again. So I try not to get too discouraged when I don't get a card that, was cool. As far as buyer's remorse, I don't really have buyer's remorse. I'm kind of a patient buyer, I think. And so rarely will I buy a card and go, I shouldn't have bought that, or I paid too much. I generally just kind of, once I buy the card, I don't really look at the prices anymore, because then if it goes down, then I get discouraged. So I don't really have that happen. Recently I did the video on the Whitey Ford rookie card, the 51 Bowman, and that when I cracked it out of the holder, it looked to me like it had color that had been added into a portion of his cap. And that bummed me out pretty bad, because when I bought it, it was in a 2 holder. And then all of a sudden, it looks to me like it's altered. So I felt like some remorse, some buyer's remorse, because I felt like I didn't buy what I thought I bought, even though I bought a graded card to protect myself from buying something that was altered. But then as y'all know from the video that I posted, GMA, I sent it to them and they reimbursed me full refund for what I paid for the card. So that was a little bit of buyer's remorse. I had one time that not that long ago, I bought a card and then I sent it in to get graded and it came back minimum sized. So that was kind of a bummer, because then I don't want to sell it to someone else, because I don't want to sell a card to someone else that got minimum sized and them think that they could send it in to get graded. But then, you wonder, well, is it minimum sized or was it trimmed? And so that, there's a little bit of buyer's remorse from that, but nothing crazy. Generally, I try not to live in regret, even though I think that I probably do more than I wish that I did. But I try not to live in past mistakes. I try to just say, okay, this is where I am now. What can I do about it from here moving forward? Instead of, I wish I hadn't done that back, a while back. Because, we cannot change the past, but we can change the future. So if you take something like, buying a card that, was maybe from a grading company you didn't know much about, and you didn't, maybe you can take from that, hey, in the future, at least I know with that company, if I buy a card and there's something with it, I can send it in. And now I have information. So if there's anything we can learn out of an incident like this, we got to focus on what we can learn. and not focus on the negative thing that happened. That's just my take. That said, that does it for our 5 questions this week. Once again, if you have a question for me, please, seriously, do not hesitate. All you have to do down below in the comments is just type out your question. What do you think about this? What are your thoughts on that? What's your opinion on this? I love seeing what you all have asked and continue to ask. If you've asked a question before and I didn't get to the question, I'm only picking 5 a week. So just ask it again. And generally what happens is the questions that I don't answer, if I see them again, they go to the top of my list. So keep asking if you've asked a question before and I haven't gotten to it. If you've not asked a question before, or you have and you just have a new thought, new question, new thing to talk about, again, down below, please post that in the comments. And I look forward to seeing what you have for me.